D4 Sports, it is draft season, baby, and it's your host, James Alba. I'm so pumped to be joining you guys today and giving you my mock draft for the 2021 season. It is Wednesday. Draft is tomorrow. You'll be seeing this Thursday morning. I'll be uploading it, just giving you guys my thoughts, my picks, and my predictions on what's going to take place here in the first round. Want to cut it, relatively short. Don't want it to be too long of a mock draft, but you know me, I can get to talking for hours about the draft. I'm going to try and keep this to under 30 minutes. So if I go fast or I don't give your team as much love, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to get us out of here as quickly as possible. Today, we're going to be drinking. It is a beer from Secatog Brewing Company. It is called That's a Bad Word, Mom. It is a New England IPA. Shout out to Secatog. Join us this weekend. We will be printing shirts on site for their second anniversary event. We are so pumped to be working with them. We'll also have a giveaway going on the Southern Bottle channel, so make sure to give that a check too. Delicious. All right, so here we go. NFL mock draft time. First overall pick, no surprise, it is going to be the Jacksonville Jaguars selecting Trevor Lawrence, the quarterback out of Clemson. This pick comes as no surprise to anybody. He's been the number one quarterback on every person's board for a large portion of the last 2 to 3 years. Urban Meyer takes the job in Jacksonville to get this guy in his locker room, to get him as part of his program, and he is going to transform Jacksonville. They basically tanked this year in order to get him, and they are successful in doing so. Trevor Lawrence steps up. He becomes the day one starter there in Jacksonville. Huge arm talent, huge size, 6'6", 210 pounds, has the ability to run, can make every pass in the playbook. He is going to be an absolute electric player for Jacksonville, add a lot of buzz to that team. The Jets don't miss out, though. With the second overall pick, they select quarterback Zach Wilson from BYU. Zach Wilson is a guy very similar to Trevor Lawrence. The arm talent just jumps off the screen when you're watching him play. He has the ability to make every throw in the book as well, but he also has the ability to create off platform, which is so huge for this Mike Shanahan style of offense and Kyle Shanahan style of offense that the Jets are going to be implementing with Rob Saleh as the new head coach. This is going to require Zach Wilson to be able to create on the run, because a lot of this offense is predicated off of play action. And I think it is perfect for him to be in this type of a system. He even said it himself. He wanted to play for a Kyle Shanahan style of offense, which he gets to do in New York. So pairing him with this coaching staff, with this team, second overall pick, a huge jump from what his preseason ranking was as a quarterback. He really had a phenomenal season. He gets rewarded as being the number 2 overall pick, and what I think is going to be a quarterback that the Jets and Jets fans can love and build around for a very long time. With the number 3 pick, this is the pick that San Francisco traded up in order to get from Miami. They trade up, and they're going to select Mac Jones. Now, a lot of people might groan and begrudge that because they don't think Mac Jones is a very good quarterback. I personally agree that Mac Jones is probably my 5th-rated quarterback on my list, but however, Kyle Shanahan likes him. And I personally believe that even though there are some people in San Francisco, particularly in the front office, that want a guy like Justin Fields or Trey Lance more, I think what Kyle Shanahan says is going to go in this case, because it's his quarterback, it's his team, and he has proven to be a very capable NFL head coach. I don't think they have any plans on going against what he wants. Even in a collaborative effort with the front office, I believe they opt to go with Mac Jones, which is a good pick. Mac Jones can make every throw that you want him to make, and he does it with very good anticipation, very good poise. He's a tremendous leader coming from a national championship season at Alabama. You saw it on the field. In the SEC, he put up numbers comparable to Joe Burrow. Now, I don't think Mac Jones is as good as Joe Burrow, but in terms of being able to produce, Mac Jones put up numbers, and he had a very good receiving core around him. I understand that, but he was able to get those guys and throw them open, and they were open a lot. I think you give him a coach like Kyle Shanahan, he's going to be able to scheme up a lot of, very dynamic plays for him to be successful. And he's a smart kid, not a very good athlete, but I think of guys like Matt Ryan, who Kyle Shanahan turned into an MVP when he was in Atlanta as the OC. I see him in a similar breath. He's not going to wow you with his ability to move or his ability to run, but he just knows what he's doing. He can make every throw you ask him to. He doesn't have the most dynamic arm talent or arm strength, but he just is deadly accurate with the football and has incredible footwork. I think he's going to pair well. You know, you have guys like Zach Wilson who can move and make plays off platform that can succeed in this offense that Kyle Shanahan implements. I think Mac Jones also has a place in this offense too because of his anticipation and because of his accuracy. My number 4 pick could be a quarterback here for Atlanta, but I'm opting to go with Kyle Pitts, the tight end out of Florida. Incredibly high for a tight end to be taken, but I think this tight end is worth it. We throw the term generational talent around way too much when we're talking NFL draft, but I think this guy is a generational talent at tight end. He is that good. 6'6", 230, runs a sub 4.5. He can outmuscle any DB that you put on him, and he can outrun any linebacker or even safety, really, that you put on him as well. He is an absolute X-factor matchup nightmare that no defense wants to defend, and you saw him wreak havoc on teams in the SEC for the last 2 years. He is going to be probably a top 5 tight end the second he steps into the league, which is high praise, but you just look at this guy's total package, and you can't help but just marvel at what he can do. Now for the Bengals. Bengals, a debate going on between Ja'Marr Chase or Penei Sewell. I personally believe Penei Sewell should be the pick, and I'm going to go with him here at number 5. Joe Burrow lost half of his season last year with a torn ACL due to his offensive line not being able to protect him. He got injured. He's on the rehab path. He should be ready for week 1 next season, but you need to protect your number 1 overall pick. You just have to. I don't care how good Ja'Marr Chase is. He is worthy of being a top 5 pick. But if you don't have the offensive line in place to help Joe Burrow succeed, he can have all the receivers in the world. It's not going to matter. You get Sewell. I think he is a decent floor, but his ceiling is just through the roof. He could be one of the 5 best tackles in football within 2 years. He is incredibly quick for his size, which is 6'4", about 335 pounds. Moves like he's like 290. It's crazy. He has a lot of power, a lot of finish. Not the most refined blocker yet, but you get him with an offensive line coach that can work with him, and I think you can see him blossom into a top-tier tackle one day. The Dolphins, at 6, they traded up with the Eagles to get back into the top 10. They go with Ja'Marr Chase, the wide receiver from LSU. I think you have to surround Tua with as much talent as possible. The Dolphins are lacking in the receiving core. You get a guy like Ja'Marr Chase who can really play anywhere. He can play in the slot. He can dominate outside. He has the speed for run after catch, but he has the body type and the physicality to box out defenders and make contested catches. This guy can be a superstar in the making. My number 1 receiver coming out. Honestly, could have been the number 1 receiver coming out last year as a true sophomore. He opts out this season. I don't think it affects his draft stock at all. He's the number 1 receiver off the board, and he goes number 6 here to the Dolphins. Number 7 is where we have our first trade come in. I have the New England Patriots moving up into the top 10, trading with the Lions to select Justin Fields, the quarterback out of Ohio State. Now, they give up 2 first-round picks and a 4th-round pick to make this happen, which I think is good compensation for the Lions. They do need more picks. They are a rebuilding team. The Patriots get to take a quarterback who is very similar to the mold of what they have right now in Cam Newton. Very good athlete, can create when things break down, and has good arm talent. Now, Justin Fields does need to improve as a passer. He does not have the most anticipation when it comes to making passes, against tight coverage or when things break down. He took a lot of sacks last year. I think he needs a year to develop. If you give him that year to develop, which I think he can get, behind Cam Newton, he can turn into a dynamic starting quarterback. So New England trades into the top 10, selects Justin Fields. I hope they give him the time to develop because he needs it. And if he does, he could be what Cam Newton was in those later years in Carolina, which is an MVP type of candidate, but he needs that time to develop. And number 8, speaking of the Carolina Panthers, I have them selecting offensive tackle Rashawn Slater out of Northwestern. They just traded Teddy Bridgewater literally 3 hours before I made this video, so it's become quite apparent that Sam Darnold will be their starting quarterback going into 2021. With Rashawn Slater, they are able to now surround Sam with more offensive line help, which they desperately needs to do. They have the weapons to be successful. Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore, Christian McCaffrey, all surrounded by Sam Darnold and a very good coaching staff with Joe Brady running the offense, who will probably be a head coach by 2022. Give Sam the protection he needs. I think Carolina can be a very sneaky team going into next year. Not talking about, playoffs for sure or anything, but I think they could be a team that finds themselves with 9 wins and maybe looking at a wild card. I definitely think they could be a very successful team if they put the protection around Sam Darnold that they need to. Another trade here, I have Washington, the Washington football team trading up into the top 10, trading with the Broncos, which is a very hot trade back spot right now. The Broncos are looking to move back from what all the reports are. I have the Washington football team moving up 10 spots from 19 to select Trey Lance, quarterback from North Dakota State. Now, he does need an extra year to develop. There's no question about it. He only played, I think it was 13 games at North Dakota State, 1 full season of starting, plus the 1 extra game that they played this year when their COVID season, when their season got canceled due to COVID. They put 1 non-league game on the schedule so that they can showcase Trey Lance. And I think when you look at the whole body of work, Trey Lance has the ability to be a dynamic runner. He already is. He's probably the most dynamic runner in this draft class at the quarterback position. However, he also does have elite potential in terms of his arm talent. He has a rifle for an arm. If he can sit for a year behind, I believe it's Ryan Fitzpatrick right now, slated as the starting quarterback, believe it or not, in Washington, he has the ability to be a dynamic quarterback. He needs the time to develop, similar to Justin Fields, though. At 10, I have the Cowboys surprisingly taking Christian Barmore, interior defensive lineman out of Alabama. A lot of people like to mock corner to the Cowboys here. However, I believe that the Cowboys need to capitalize on taking the number 1 interior defensive lineman in the class, because that position is so thin in this year's draft. Barmore is by far the number 1 guy. And in a division where I don't feel like it's going to be a very dynamic passing division, the Giants with Saquon Barkley are going to run the ball more than they pass. I believe the Redskins proved last year. I'm sorry, not the Redskins, the Washington football team. The Washington football team proved that they want to be more of a ground and pound team under Ron Rivera. And then the Eagles, who I don't believe are going to try and throw the ball 50 times with Jalen Hurts, they're going to be more of a running-based football team. You have to stop the run if you want to have a chance in this division, which right now they can't with their interior defensive line. You get Barmore, ton of upside, big season last year at Alabama. I believe that he could be a guy that becomes a building block for this defensive line and someone that's worth reaching for at this pick. At number 11, the New York Giants luck into getting Devonta Smith, the wide receiver from Alabama. He falls to number 11. He could be considered the number 1 receiver in this draft class. No one would really argue with you about it. Heisman Trophy winner, had a phenomenal season this year. The biggest thing that people have question marks about is the frame. He's only about 170 to 175 pounds at 6'1", but it has not stopped him from being a physical receiver. He's great at contested catches. He gets off of press very well. If no one can keep up with you, it doesn't really matter how heavy you are. So I think Devonta Smith is a person that the Giants need, because they need to see what Daniel Jones has. It is a big year development-wise for Daniel Jones. This is really the year 3, where the Giants are going to find out, do we have our franchise quarterback, or are we looking for one come 2022? So Devonta Smith, give Daniel Jones all the help he can get and hope that you have your franchise quarterback. Got to take a break for a second. All right, we're back. Number 12, the Eagles select J.C. Horn, cornerback from South Carolina. J.C. Horn is my number 1 corner in this draft. So many people have Patrick Surtain II as the number 1 corner. I personally don't. J.C. Horn has the size, he has elite athleticism, and he has the pedigree coming from the SEC, just like Surtain, but coming from the SEC, where he covered so many first-round caliber wide receivers. He has covered Jamar Chase. He has covered Justin Jefferson, Terrace Marshall Jr., Seth Williams. Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith. Even going back to 2019, he covered Jerry Jeudy. He has covered elite athletes. Elijah Moore from Ole Miss. He has been in a conference where he had to cover week in and week out guys who are surefire number one picks, and he did it very well. Now, Devonta Smith did get him a couple times, but Devonta Smith got everybody a couple times that played defensive back. I think J.C. Horn is an elite level corner prospect, probably one of the better ones I've scouted, even though not many people have him as the number one guy. I'm not sure what it is. He has an NFL pedigree. His dad was a receiver for the Saints. I don't understand why people are jumping to Patrick Surtain as the number one guy. I guess it's because, it's just we've heard it for so long that we started to believe it, which is fine. I have Surtain as my number two. But J.C. Horn, to me, just does everything better. And I have him as my number one guy. The Eagles get a corner that they desperately need, and I think he makes their defense so much better. At 13, the Chargers, it's very simple. Protect your superstar second-year quarterback in Justin Herbert. They go with offensive tackle Christian Darrisaw out of Virginia Tech, who I believe is probably the best pass blocker in the class. His floor is lower than guys like Rashawn Slater or Penei Sewell, but his ceiling is just as good as those guys because I believe he can be a top 5 tackle in the league, just like I believe that Penei Sewell can be. Slater, to me personally, does not have the ceiling that Darrisaw or Sewell have, but Slater has the highest floor. So Carolina takes Slater, who is a guy that will slot in on that offensive line from day one. Darrisaw will start day one for the Chargers, but he is a little bit more of a projection. I think Darrisaw, if all things break right, ends up being better than Slater. I don't think he ends up being better than Sewell, but the Chargers will opt to have a guy that could be a top 10 tackle in this league for years to come. They need to protect Justin Herbert if they want to be successful. Mind my arm as I lean in. I'm just scrolling down on my mock draft, had it written out for you guys. 14, I have the Vikings selecting Jaelan Phillips, the edge from Miami. Now, a lot of people want this to be an offensive line pick. I think they opt to do what they've done in years past, which is draft offensive line later. Guys like Brian O'Neill, Ezra Cleveland, starters that they have on their O-line right now. I believe they wait, but they opt to take the highest upside edge rusher in this draft class, similar to how they drafted Danielle Hunter a couple years back. Way more of a projection. They wanted to capitalize on upside. Jaelan Phillips, despite his injury concerns, is my number one edge in this entire class. He is an absolute freak show athletically. 6'6", about 250 pounds, 245 pounds maybe, and he runs like lightning. He is absolutely electric. He can defend the run. He can rush power. He can rush speed. I think the whole package for him has him as a Pro Bowl caliber defensive end. You pair him opposite of Danielle Hunter and tell them to go get after Aaron Rodgers, I think you're going to have a lot of success with that. This is something the Vikings need. They have always been a team that had good defensive line talent until last year. Get Jaelan Phillips, even with the medical concerns, and hope you find a diamond in the rough, which I think they can get. Now, the Lions traded back to 15 with the Patriots. I have them getting Jalen Waddle, which is a guy they could have taken at number 7. Jalen Waddle, the receiver from Alabama, an absolute electric guy after the catch, dynamic athlete. A lot of Tyreek Hill comparisons. I don't think he's that fast, but I do think he is a sub, 4.35 type of guy who can really blaze an open field. The Lions have no receivers on their depth chart that are worth a damn. No offense. But you lose Kenny Golladay. You lost Marvin Jones. I believe, I don't think Jared Goff is going to be the guy for them after the Matt Stafford trade, but you give him a weapon to see what you have, and you now have 3 first-round picks going into 2022 to really revamp this offense. Jalen Waddle, I think, can probably, in terms of, not probably, but ceiling-wise, Jalen Waddle could end up being the number 1 receiver in this draft class, and no one would really be shocked. He is that electric of a player. I don't think he has to be stuck in the slot to stay. I think he can play all over the place. He can play out wide. He can play, he can play in the slot and be a gadget type of guy. No matter where you put him, though, he's going to be Detroit's most dynamic weapon on their offense. Now, the Cardinals luck into having Patrick Surtain fall to them. Patrick Surtain, I think, will walk in and immediately become their best cornerback. 6'2", about 200 pounds. He has the ability to play press, bump and run. He's a really good zone cover corner. I don't think he's the most dynamic man-to-man corner, but you put him in a system where he can drop back and cover a deep third from press. Think of like that Seattle Seahawks cover 3 type of system. That's where he's really going to excel because he is long, he is athletic, and he has ball skills. I think he has the ability to really succeed with the Cardinals. You now have the ability to bump Byron Murphy into the slot if you want to. And, if you have a secondary that can cover J.J. Watt, Chandler Jones, Isaiah Simmons, who's probably going to bump down and play linebacker, Hassan Reddick, I think this front 7 can get after the quarterback, and they can really be dynamic on defense. I think the defense for the Cardinals might be one of the most surprising units in the league next year. The Raiders, who lost a lot of talent on the offensive line, opt to go with Tevin Jenkins, the offensive tackle from Oklahoma State. I think he has the attitude and the grittiness that John Gruden is going to love. He is nasty. He is familiar in an outside zone type of scheme, which the Raiders do a lot of. They also do run a lot of power and a lot of gap scheme runs, but I think Jenkins has the ability to finish those blocks, but also agile enough coming from OK State, where they did run a lot of wide zone, to play in that type of a system. The Raiders want to run the ball. We know they want to run the ball. They love Josh Jacobs. They love setting up play action for Derek Carr. I think Tevin Jenkins is a guy you need to plug in at right tackle after Colton Miller proved that he can finally be the starting left tackle over the last couple of years. You now have some bookend tackles you can play around with, and I think they get better because of it. The Dolphins now take one of the more polarizing prospects in this draft, Micah Parsons, the linebacker from Penn State. Now, here's my thing with Micah Parsons. Micah Parsons, to me, is not a true inside linebacker that can drop back and cover and do all these things. He is more of a gadget defensive player. I think of him, similar to a guy like Dante Hightower from New England, who has played middle linebacker, but also lines up on the edge and does a couple of different things, bigger linebacker. But I think Micah Parsons can take that role and elevate it to, the 10th degree because of his speed and athleticism, which Hightower never really had coming out of Bama. I think the Dolphins replaced Kyle Van Noy, who they cut after one season, and immediately put Micah Parsons in the same role. And I believe that role gets absolutely elevated to the next level. He is very good in this type of a system where he could play close to the line of scrimmage, blitz, defend the run, and not have to worry about really dropping back and covering too much, because I don't think that's his game. This is probably the most ideal landing spot for him, and that's why I slotted him in here. I don't see many other places he can go to where he would have this type of a success. There's also the off-field concerns. I'm not as worried about it, but you have that mixed with the fact that he's not a great scheme fit in many places, and he falls here, but I think the Dolphins can really reap the benefits of it. At 19, the Broncos, who traded back with the Washington football team, they take Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, another linebacker from Notre Dame. I believe that this is an ideal landing spot for JOK because you've seen what Vic Fangio can do with these athletic coverage style linebackers. Think of Roquan Smith, Danny Trevathan, even going back to his time in San Francisco with Navarro Bowman and Patrick Willis. You get a guy that is able to drop back and cover, which JOK can. JOK covers like a safety in the open field. And now you can play games with him all over the field. I think this is the best place he can go to, similar to Micah Parsons. Miami's a good place for him. JOK, I think, is an ideal place. Denver is an ideal place for JOK because he can really patrol the back end. He is different from what the other linebackers of the Broncos have in terms of what they can do. He is a very good cover guy, and I think, you have guys like Darren Waller and Travis Kelce in the AFC West. You need to be able to cover those guys, and if you have a linebacker that can do it, rather than having to bracket him with a safety or even have a corner do it, it makes your entire defense elevate, which I think the Broncos are on the rise after signing Kyle Fuller, They were able to retain Justin Simmons. I think this defense can be very good next year if JOK steps in and can take away some of the underneath stuff by covering the tight ends and the backs out of the backfield. For the Bears, I'm just scrolling again. The Bears, unfortunately, do not have a quarterback on the board that they can draft with this pick. So they're going to roll out Andy Dalton and Nick Foles and hope for the best. But Elijah Vera-Tucker from USC is an offensive lineman that I think can be very valuable to them because they do have a couple of different needs on the offensive line, and AVT is probably the most versatile offensive lineman in this draft in terms of having played multiple positions. He has played guard, he has played right tackle, he's played left tackle. I think he can survive at any spot that you put him at. And really, it's also best player available. I just think, if you're not going to have the most dynamic quarterback in the league, at least protect him. I don't think the Bears trust Matt Nagy and company to draft a quarterback, so that's one of the reasons I don't have him as a trade-up candidate. So I think you just draft an offensive lineman. This might be the last season that we see with Matt Nagy. You let a new coaching staff come in and then potentially address the quarterback position then. The Indianapolis Colts, I have going with Jason Oweh, the edge from Penn State. Now, I know the tackle is the biggest need for this team, but I believe Oweh is more of a first-round caliber prospect than any of the tackles you would draft in this spot. I don't like any of the tackles as first-round picks. I like them as second-round picks, and that's where I would have Indy address the offensive line spot. But Jason Oweh, in terms of upside, is probably the most athletic edge rusher in this class. This is a very good defense here in Indianapolis, and I believe if you let him come in, you don't ask him to do too much, you just put him on the edge and say, get after the QB. He has the speed and frame to be very successful in that role, and I think pairing him with this group and this defensive coaching staff puts him in a position to succeed. And if you can unlock that potential, you have a superstar in the making. The Titans opt to go with Caleb Farley, the cornerback for Virginia Tech. They desperately need a corner. And you've seen that they are okay with drafting guys that are currently dealing with injury. They drafted, what was his name? Trying to think of the interior defensive lineman, Simmons from Mississippi State. They drafted Simmons coming off of an injury, and he missed multiple games going into his rookie season, and now he's one of the best defensive linemen on their team. I think Farley can end up being the best corner on their team with enough time to heal from his injury. He plays the exact type of way that a Mike Vrabel corner would want to play. He is long, he is athletic, he can play man, he can play zone, he has ball skills. He's arguably, a lot of people had him as the number one corner in the draft until all these medical red flags come up. So I think Caleb Farley, he's an upside pick. He can be a big hit for the Titans who need a corner. I think he's a really good fit here. The Jets at 23, their second first-round pick. I have, surprisingly, going Zaven Collins, the linebacker from Tulsa. And now, for me, I'm looking at Zaven Collins not as a middle linebacker like a C.J. Mosley. I see him as a guy that can play outside linebacker in a 4-3, but also potentially be one of these guys that can play edge because he has shown the ability to rush the passer. He has the size to rush the passer. He's 6'4", 260 pounds. He has the ability to play the role in this Rob Salah defense where one of the defensive ends doesn't always have his hand in the dirt. A lot of times they'll drop one of their defensive ends and rush three. And I think Zaven Collins has a really good ability off the line of scrimmage to drop and play coverage. You saw him do that at Tulsa. And you also saw him perform in three-man fronts and stop the run and get after the quarterback in blitz situations. So I think he really can slot in and elevate the linebacking position for the Jets, who are very thin right now. They signed Jared Davis and they have C.J. Mosley, but there's a lot of question marks around after that, and I think Zaven Collins can come in and provide a number of different things for this defense. The Pittsburgh Steelers at 24 are going to go with Landon Dickerson, the interior offensive lineman from Alabama. If it wasn't for Landon Dickerson's ACL injury during the season last year, I believe he's a top 15 pick. That's how good of a center he is. I think the Steelers, who lost Mike Pouncey and who are really struggling on the offensive line right now outside of guys like David DeCastro, go with a guy like Dickerson to just really solidify the interior, at least, of this offensive line. Big Ben's not getting any younger. This might be the last year that he plays. At least protect him and keep him upright. I think Dickerson provides a lot in the run game. He's a powerful blocker. He is a very good pass protector. He arguably could be a top 5 center, top 10 center in the league by the time week 8 rolls around. That's how good this guy can be. The Steelers, I believe, honestly, are lucky to have him in this spot because of the injury that he was dealing with. Jaguars at 25, pretty popular pick here. Trayvon Moehrig, safety out of TCU. I like Moehrig a lot. The Jaguars signed, I believe it was Rayshawn Jenkins in free agency to a big contract. I don't believe he moves the needle very much for them in the safety department. Moehrig, I think, can, because he could play in a number of different schemes. He's a very good zone cover type of safety, playing a lot of quarters coverage at TCU. I think he can drop and defend the middle of the field. He's also a very, willing tackler. I think he can come down in the box and stop running backs in the hole if he had to. Because of that, I think it just makes it a versatile chess piece for Jacksonville to build around. They drafted C.J. Henderson, the corner, last year. Now you get a safety to solidify the back end a little bit more. And I think Jacksonville's defense could be on the rise. They need a lot, they're going to need another draft or two, but I think with Lawrence and Moehrig, you draft 2 building blocks, two pieces on both offense and defense that are usually leadership type of positions, safety and quarterback. So, you're trying to build this thing the right way. I think Moehrig does a lot of things well and will make the defense better no matter where he lines up. Okay, now my last scroll here. Yay. All right. Now the Cleveland Browns don't normally draft linebacker very high, but here I just think they have to because they are so thin at the position and so good everywhere else. I have them going with Jamin Davis, the linebacker from Kentucky. He is a very long, he is a very rangy linebacker, can cover very, very well. I believe you put him on this defense, and all of a sudden, everything looks a little bit better. They addressed the safety position in free agency by signing John Johnson III. Corner, I think, can be addressed later in the draft. They signed Jadeveon Clowney to rush opposite Myles Garrett. Now you have a stout defensive line, maybe not as much in the interior, but certainly on the edges. You have 2 bookend defensive ends that are former number 1 overall picks. You put Jamin Davis in the middle of it and let him be a sideline-to-sideline cover linebacker, and I think he can be an absolute superstar on this defense. The offense, to me, is set. Baker, fantastic offensive line, probably the best offensive line in the sport right now. 2 really good running backs, 2 really good receivers, a good tight end. Go and make sure your defense can keep you in games and sometimes even win you games. I think if Davis pans out the way I think he can, the Browns defense could also arguably be a top 15 unit, top 10 unit in the league, and that will make them a surefire playoff team. The Ravens go with Kwity Paye, edge from Michigan. This is their first round pick after the Orlando Brown trade. Kwity Paye from Michigan is kind of the edge rusher that you like to see that, well, not that you like, but the type of edge rusher you normally see them target. Bigger edge rusher for a 3-4 defense, but he has the ability to rush off the edge. He has the ability to put his hand in the ground and play a 4-eye if you want him to. 4-eye meaning playing over the tackle in a 3-4 defense. Really has the ability to stop the run really well. He's a really good run defender, which I think is important considering, the Browns are a very good running team. Pittsburgh probably going to be a little bit more of a running team this year. I just think this is a type of pick where they can develop his pass rush. He has the athletic upside to be a good pass rusher, but you will need to wait a year or two to see that. Right now, he is going to be a dominant run defender, and I think over time will develop into one of the better pass rushers on this team. If he doesn't work out on the edge, I think he has the ability to bump down and play a 3-4 defensive end, kind of like not the same size as Calais Campbell, but in that type of role where he can play on the edge, he can bump inside, that type of a guy. The Saints, I have them going with Eric Stokes, the corner out of Georgia, who has tested really well during the pro day process. He is a true man cover corner coming from Georgia who plays a lot of man coverage, which I think is important for the Saints because they play a lot of man. You put him opposite of Marshawn Lattimore. I think, you really need to have two corners that can cover man well in this defense. They don't right now. You get, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson in the slot. You have Lattimore and Stokes out wide, playing on the outside corners. Your safety position is pretty much, two safety positions is pretty much set with Marcus Williams back there. I think, in a division, that is going to really predicate on passing. If you don't have corners that fit your scheme, you're going to really struggle to succeed. So I go with Stokes over even a guy like Greg Newsome because I believe Stokes is the better man cover guy, which just fits the scheme better. Green Bay, I have them finally giving Aaron Rodgers a weapon, and they go with Elijah Moore, the wide receiver from Ole Miss. Elijah Moore is probably the best slot receiver in this entire draft. He is absolutely electric, blazing fast. He is going to give the Packers the type of separation they need to take shots over the top. Davante Adams, even though he's probably a top 3 receiver in the league right now, makes a lot of his money on comeback routes, short to intermediate stuff. I think you put him in a situation where you can have a deep threat, and now Aaron Rodgers has a lot more to play with, just in the open field. At 30, I have the Buffalo Bills selecting Greg Newsome, the corner from Northwestern, who I mentioned with the Saints pick, but I think he fits way better here in Buffalo. Greg Newsome is the type of guy that can really succeed in this defense. He has incredible hips in zone coverage. He's long. He's willing to tackle. He is fast. He has incredible ball skills. I think him and Trey White pairing up opposite of each other are going to be a very dynamic duo to defend the pass in the AFC. They could go edge rusher here. I could see that, but I just think they opt to go with more upside here, and that's why I have them. Excuse me. Must have been that's a bad word, Mom Beer. But that's why I have them opting to go with a cornerback. I think, if you want to take that next step and win a Super Bowl, you have to do it by stopping the pass because you have Patrick Mahomes, who's still there in the AFC, looking to beat you every year. Load up on corner talent and get yourself in a situation where you can keep up with the receivers on the Chief. The Ravens are now back up, and I have them going with the receiver. I have them taking Rashad Bateman, the receiver from Minnesota. I think Rashad Bateman is the perfect complement to a guy like Marquise Brown. Marquise Brown, a smaller sort of, deep threat receiver, go over the top. I think Rashad Bateman does everything that you need him to do. He has the ability to play in the slot if you want him to, and similar to like that Michael Thomas role in New Orleans, just that contested catch guy. He's going to be a willing blocker in the run game, which I think is important, and he's going to make Lamar Jackson's life a lot easier because he's a reliable target on contested catch situations, which they don't really have right now outside of the tight end Mark Andrews. Now, a lot of people are going to say, well, they just traded Orlando Brown. Why aren't you taking a tackle? To me, if you're a team like the Ravens, who is in a position to succeed right now, and you're going to trade Orlando Brown, who was disgruntled, but he was still under contract, if you're going to trade him to a contending team like the Chiefs, who are in your conference, you're not going to hit the panic button and immediately try to replace him in the draft. I think they'll wait until the second round to do that with guys like Liam Eichenberg or even like an Alex Leatherwood and try to address it then. I don't think they need to hit the panic button and draft a tackle who I don't believe has a first-round grade. There's no more tackles left that are left on the board that have a first-round grade for me. Wait until the later rounds to address it. And the other thing is Lamar doesn't need this super clean pocket. He's the most electric mobile quarterback in the game today. if you want to hit the panic button and try and replace Orlando Brown this quickly, I think you're going to leave talent on the board that you could have taken. So I have them going Bateman, a receiver, much more of a position of need, and now the Ravens address edge and receiver and now wait to address the offensive line, which I think overall is going to make them a better team. And then finally, my last pick here in the first round, I have the Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers selecting edge Joe Tryon from Washington. Now, Joe Tryon is a guy that not many people have mocked as a first-round pick. If you notice, I have him going over a guy like Azeez Ojulari. The reason I'm going with Tryon is because I think his ceiling is way more, his potential and his ceiling are far higher than that of a guy like Azeez Ojulari. Azeez Ojulari is really like a one-trick pony. He's a speed pass rusher, get to the edge, and that's it. I think Tryon has the ability to develop into something way more. I think he has the ability to drop into coverage as a 3-4 outside linebacker. He also has the ability to be a dynamic pass rusher. The reason why I go with this pick is because he's going to have the time to develop with Shaq Barrett coming back this year and Jason Pierre-Paul on the opposite edge still, having years of football ahead of him. So you give Tryon the time to develop behind those guys, and I think 2 years from now, Joe Tryon is going to be a better football player than some of the other edge defenders that I had passed up for him. So that's my pick for Tampa. Tampa doesn't really need much, if I'm being honest. They're in a situation where they can go with an upside play here like Tryon. The rest of their roster is absolutely loaded, and they probably have one of the better chances to repeat as Super Bowl champions as any team that we've seen in the last couple of years. That's how complete their roster is after being able to retain everybody. So that's it, guys. That is my first round predictions. Now, I understand probably 90% of my picks are going to be wrong, but that's okay. I tried to put guys in positions where I saw fit. My top guys, NFL, a couple of NFL scouts might not agree with me. That's okay. Just my opinion, just my research, what I have found watching film, and just, my study of what some of these teams like to do. So leave anything in the comments that you may disagree with. I understand this is probably going to get posted. This will be posted in the morning. You might not have enough time to check it out before the draft, but check back if you stumble across it and tell me how you think I did. Once again, guys, this is D4 Sports. It's sports entertainment for the walk-ons of life. Can't wait for Thursday night, and I will talk to you guys next time. Peace.